Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1979. We're going to be taking a look at Joan Armatrading and she's going to be playing through Steppin Out. So let's get Joan up on screen and see how she gets on.
I'm gonna step out of emotions, break events and bring me down. I'm so uncertain, but it's my fault for letting you distract me. It's trouble now, I'm on the edge, stepping out, right out of devotion, stepping out of love, oh yeah. I don't want no contradiction, your navigation's gone haywire. Your little arrow always miss my heart by mine. You better hide your self-satisfied smile, 'cause I'm stepping out, right out of commotion, stepping into life again. Steppin' out.
I'm just going to jump in here because we've got a lot to talk about already. Joan, first of all, with her voice, she's got such a unique voice. And another thing is that this performance, just playing with an acoustic guitar, you might have seen Joan maybe on Top of the Pops in the UK here with a full band, or at least then out the front of the band with just a microphone and not even playing any instruments, but she plays piano as well and, well, guitar obviously, but also 12-string guitar. And having the ability, like she just did, to play the guitar at the level that she's playing it, there is so much going on with that right hand, with the rhythm hand, but also playing the riffs with the left hand, because in amongst the riffs, she's palm muting in order to get a little bit more of a percussive sound out of the riff and also to keep the rhythm going, because when it's just a guitar by itself and you haven't got the luxury of a band behind you filling in all of that space, it means that you have to try and get the strings to ring out as much as possible in between your single lead notes or your single note riffs. And that's what Joan's doing here. She really is laying into the strings even while she's playing those riffs. And it's one of those situations that people trying to tab this up will have real difficulty because of the way that Joan throws in that really loose wrist on the right hand, getting that emphasis, getting the rhythm, but also striking the open strings whilst playing riffs, because it's more of a feel way of playing and just going with that expressive percussive sound on the guitar and not worrying if you are hitting open strings, because it all adds into the sound. That's the point, that's the mood, that's what she's going for. Another thing is the way that Joan goes from that full strumming technique on the right hand with a lot of the work being done by the wrist, because it means that she can stay closer to the strings when she wants to then pick out a particular string for a riff. And that's one of the things that takes a lot of practice, to go from that strumming action to then an exact pick on a particular string because your target is so small. So Joan is a really accomplished player and has spent a hell of a lot of time working on her techniques and getting this down. Also got some bends being thrown into that lead section, and it's more of a lead combined with a riff because the rhythm continues throughout. On the guitar we've also got that chorus effect, which is going to give it a slightly different sound, just make it a little bit more interesting to listen to when she goes off into the lead sections. But again, never leaving the riff, never leaving the groove. This is the thing that when you're just an artist playing a guitar and that's all you've got to combine lead and rhythm, because if you go off into just playing single note lead sections, the whole groove, everything's going to fall out. There's got to be some kind of percussion or some kind of rhythm work going on in conjunction with your lead. And interestingly, in 2015, she actually went back to performing like this, just her and a guitar. I think at that stage, she was looking to cut back a little bit on the tour dates because she had just been touring for years and years and years. Imagine this, 1979, and then not really stopping until 2015. So definitely earned a little bit of time for herself. But getting back to the guitar, because the subtlety of the palm muting in the right hand to give the groove is one of those things that we do get to see, because we get some good shots here of that rhythm hand, but also those subtle upstrokes that are thrown in as well to help get that groove. And it's another thing that technique wise is very difficult to do, to combine your muting with that percussive strum sound. Sometimes you want to strum down on these strings and apply the mute at the same time. That will give you that percussive sound and help to almost give a drum beat or simulate a drum beat within your playing. But then when you combine that with the upstrokes as well, it means that now Joan is throwing in such a cool groove to her playing, as well as giving us that percussive element of an effective drum beat, drum rhythm going on within her playing. But let's get back into the performance.
Right out of commotion, stepping into life, oh yeah, I'm gonna give myself promotion. I want myself a great big star. I'm not so certain I will make that star a crown. Well, I'm free and I'm alone with me. Stepping out, right out of commotion, stepping into life, oh yeah. Stepping out, stepping out, stepping out, stepping into life, oh yeah. Stepping out, stepping out, stepping out.
And there we have it. I'm stopping the video there pretty quickly because we just go to a shot of the audience for quite a long time, and I want to keep Joan in shot here because the great thing about artists really around this time, late 70s but 60s earlier, is the way that they mastered an instrument. Like I said, that Joan plays keys as well, so she's got that ability to get into a studio and effectively do most of the album herself. It might be a case that a drummer comes in, but I'm sure Joan could lay down the bass as well, and some keys and guitar and the vocals. So you have artists that could get into the studio and provide you with most of an album just themselves. They're doing the whole job, just getting the expression in their writing and their playing. And the writing, another thing about Joan, the way that when she was in her teenage years, probably around the age of 14, she started writing and only really played her own songs until her brother said, maybe you should play something that people will know. And I think she chose Sound of Silence. Obviously, people have to do covers in order to play something that people recognize and people get into, and then you can start to introduce your original stuff. And it's very rare for a player to just start out with original material and be a massive seller straight off the bat. There's always been a little bit of covers being played in order just to open that door. But Joan, once that door was open, absolutely followed that path of being an original artist and writing her own stuff, but also being able to produce most of it herself in the studio. And at age 22, Joan met lyricist Pam Nestor, and they started working on her debut album called Whatever's For Us, and that was released in 1972 by Cube Records. And she was with Cube Records for 3 years until 1975, and during that period she also appeared on the BBC Radio 1 John Peel show, which was great because it meant she got a bit of exposure for the music. But by the end of those 3 years with the label, I think she really wanted to move on and get away from that label. So maybe on Cube Records, towards the end of that contract, she didn't produce as much music as a really happy artist might have done. But once she had then finished with Cube Records, it meant that she could then sign with A&M Records in 1975. But now with A&M Records, she released her album called Back to the Night, and that was in 1975. And in 1976, she then went through a major publicity relaunch and released her self-titled album. And that got into the top 20 of the album charts and also spawned the hit single Love and Affection, which got into the top 10. And between those years of 1972 to 1976, being on the John Peel show that I mentioned earlier, getting that exposure meant that she was the first black British singer-songwriter to have international success. And I have seen an interview with Joan where she states that her favourite audience to play to is over in the USA. She just loves performing over there. She was also on Saturday Night Live, and that was 2 years before this performance that we're looking at. So she really did get herself out there and get seen by so many different countries over here in Europe, but also over in the USA. And in 1980 is where Joan radically changed her playing style, but also the sound, going for a harder pop sound with her album called Me, Myself, I. And the title track of that album was another top 40 hit for Joan. And the album as a whole was her highest charting album in the UK and the USA. And in 1981 and 1983, she released 2 more albums that both got into the top 10 of the album charts. And in 1985, just to give you an indication of her popularity over in the USA, she sold out the Red Rocks Amphitheatre in Denver. So in 1986, 1988 and 1990, Joan released 3 more albums, and the difference being here that she took over the production duties herself. And due to the success of these albums, because they all got into the top 40 of the UK album charts, A&M Records then released another compilation album in 1991, and that got into the top 10. I don't want this video to go on for too long, but just a couple of things before I finish, because in 2007 her album called Into the Blues debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Blues charts, which meant that Joan was the first UK female artist to ever achieve that. It was also nominated for a Grammy, which meant that Joan was the first UK female artist to ever have that accolade in the blues category. And finally, just Joan as a performer, an artist, but a person as well. I've seen interviews with her. She's such a nice person, but also helps so much with unsigned artists. For example, in 2012, on her UK tour, she selected 56 unsigned artists to open for her in their respective towns, and then their music was put on a 3 CD compilation album by her record label. So she really does help out so many other musicians and is a true artist herself. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one.